Hello, this is National Chess Master or Rats at chess.com, continuing my video series on the Correspondence team match played between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. This one was played on board 1. Our man is igorpastukhov playing against Sociedad 93, and CARPE DIEM had a rating advantage of about mid-2400s versus mid-2300s, and they're 2 games. So here I got the challenge of analyzing a game with players with a higher correspondence rating than I. Well, what's my real strength? I don't know. My correspondence rating is like 2250. Not trying to raise it. Not really playing. Don't really care about a rating. My ICCF rating was like mid 2300s, I think. Maybe 2400. I don't remember. It's been so long since I played. So let's just back this up. I wasn't talking about the game. We have Trump. Povsky's opening. Normally, White just goes ahead and chops this knight off right here, but this is okay, not to. And now I guess we're in Veresov's opening. Maybe it still trumps Povsky. But now White opts to chop that knight off. And so, for what it's worth, Black's picked up the bishop pair, but the game is relatively even. Neither side is gaining any kind of long-term strategic or positional advantages yet, and it did follow theory for a while. Although this type of opening is not very popular because it doesn't offer many winning chances for White. But it's one way to avoid a lot of the main theory, where you really have to know theory. But then again, in correspondence chess, you can really look up those openings and get a develop a deep understanding of them. Okay. Now, I would think, to me, the logical move here is to play knight takes d4. And the reason I want to do that is I want to blockade this isolated pawn. The pawn will remain isolated, but this also improves the position of the knight slightly. Black can't get rid of it, and if Black takes it, let's just take a look at it. Okay, he's going to take back with the pawn, but let's just examine this for a minute, because there's not much to this game. Black could take, and that just develops the white queen. And now here's the weakness, which is exposed. And for the moment, White has 2 attackers on it. Black has 2 defenders. But White's close to getting 2 more attackers on that pawn. So Black needs to react. How is he going to do that? Well, let's see. One way is to think about maybe trying to counterattack this queen, because White's just 2 moves from putting another attacker on that. Let's just illustrate. Suppose Black develops. And see, if you castle right here, this pawn is a goner. Okay? See, White can capture it. And that's maybe not so good for Black, okay? So Black needs to come up with another plan of action. He shouldn't be taking on d4. Okay? Let's go back and develop. Okay? And both sides have done a couple of developing moves. It's now Black to play. You could say that Black is a half tempo ahead in development, right? Because both sides have 3 minor pieces out. The back ranks match. Just develop the queen, and the game looks kind of even. And Black has 1 weakness, and it's a long maneuvering game, and White tries to find some way to take advantage of that. Now, the way White plays it, White takes back with the pawn on d4, and the pawn still remains isolated. It can still be a target, but we'll see what happens here. And Black goes ahead and defends that pawn and activates his rook. And Black finally gets castled. And if White takes this bishop off, this repairs the Black pawn structure, gives White a potential target. Can place rooks on the e-file, and maybe even slide the bishop over to h3, where it can maybe cause Black to make another weakness. So I think Black makes the correct choice here and chops that knight off. And just activating his pieces. But there's just not too much going on here, and it's hard to really say how one side could really improve their position. Both sides are still organizing and mobilizing their forces, and Black's getting fully developed. Chases the rook, it backs up. Now redeploy the bishop, maybe potential pressure on h7. But the white queen side's kind of a little vulnerable, and the b2 is weak. If it advances, a3 becomes weak. Of course, if it also advances, c3 will fall. So white ends up playing rook a2, and now what's going to happen over the next several moves is a draw by repetition. So let's just show the moves. Why were they playing these moves? I don't know. Mutual fear, mutual respect. But let's just. Well, we have this rook on a2. Can Black find anything else just to try to exploit the fact that rook is a little misplaced? Well, let's come back to the final position. What about b5? Black's trying to conduct some kind of a minority attack here, taking advantage of the fact that this pawn would be pinned. But I can just move his knight now. Knight to d. Okay, yeah, you can go knight to d1. And on b5, let's see. Well, you don't want to play c3. It's going to get you. Well, you could play c3, I suppose. Let's see. If pawn takes, now the knight just takes back. White has potential for an outside queenside pawn majority. White's d pawn is now isolated as well. Still, the game looks about even. I mean, I can understand, because there wasn't too much going on in the opening, why they would agree to a draw by repetition. So we'll just say that neither side was able to get anything, and a draw was a fair result. The next game is actually very entertaining. Let's flip over to that one, load it up, and wonder what move it'll start it at. Okay, come on, open up PGN. The screen, there it goes. I finally load it up. Okay.
Actually, it started at move 6. Why does it pick, or move 7? Why does it pick move 7? Why not move 12? Why not move 1 like it's supposed to? Okay, so we get a Caro-Kann defense, and I've said before I don't think white gets much out of the advanced variation. Just my opinion, but both sides are developing their pieces, and it seems to follow book for a few moves. And neither side really has anything going or anything to fear. And Black has ambitions of maybe trying to attack the white king, castle, queen side. I think this is a non-book move. And Black just protects g5 by uncovering a defense with the queen. And now the knight gets a little more locked up. Oh, and it came. And both sides are just doing a little bit of maneuvering. Now Black gets the trademark c5 tries to do in this position. Come on, make the move, please. Again, now see, there we go. Just before I clicked it again, if I clicked it just before I said that, and not bothered to say that, it would have made 2 moves. I had to back it up. This interface just needs total revamping. I'm hoping with V3 version 3 it's better. But still, both sides haven't completed the development. We're at move 13. They're just doing a bit of maneuvering. Black, there it goes. Well, it's lagging, as you can see on the video. Okay. But both sides still haven't finished their development. And as I said, and slowly but surely they're getting there. And Black still hasn't committed which side he's going to castle. I guess probably castling king side's a little more unsafe, simply because
weakness on h6, yeah, that pawn would fall. Maybe white could even pile up and try to win it. Let's talk about that for a second. Black castles. What if white plays queen d2 here? Okay, what does that do? Well, it puts a third attacker on h6. Now, one drawback with winning that pawn is that it's really going to open up lines for black to attack on the king side. It might not be a wise thing to do. Why give black an extra file? The pawn at h6 will remain a weakness as long as it's never captured. So sometimes what you want to do in a game of chess is you don't want to win these pawns right now. They're not going anywhere. Why not win it 20, 30 moves from now? And in effect, that's what you're going to see happen here. So white doesn't even try to win that pawn. It just goes about his maneuvering. And I still think the game is pretty even. White should be thinking about trying to launch a queenside attack. Black should be thinking about launching an attack on this side of the board. Let's see how it goes. And if there was an error that black made that cost him the game, strategically it could have been this one. Now, the level of play gets very complex after, and I could spend a day analyzing this, and I won't. I'll just try to summarize it quickly. But white seems to get the upper hand in this position from here on in. I think he just played a very, very nice game. And we'll see why as we go. Well, if there was a mistake that black made that cost him the game, that might have been it. But c4 locks up a good part of the queen side, and white needs to deal with this knight at some point. Oops, can't go there. Come on, draw the arrows correctly. Thank you. Probably going to come back here. And then black should maybe go about his plan of trying to attack on the queen side or king side, and white should try to figure out how to bust open lines over here. Strategically, it also seems not to make sense to take on d4, simply because that opens up a line directly towards the black king. Yet, it's going to take a lot of good moves for white to prove that he has an advantage here, and I think white just keeps coming up with good moves. Now pressures that bishop. That just drives it to a nice diagonal, pinning the g-pawn. And now pin the knight, keeping the knight out of c5, so it just goes to a5. Now white's idea is to capture on c6 and give black a weak pawn on c6. So black comes up with a move with a lot of tactical resources to it. It involves a pawn sacrifice, but black's going to gain it back in the long run or have positional compensation, and we'll see as we go there. d4 is under fire. It's only defended by a rook and a queen. To chase the rook out, it does require black to weaken his king position a little bit. So maybe this is a tiny mistake too by playing b5. Although it's still not clear exactly how white's going to make progress, unless you go back to what I said earlier when I first talked about going after this h6 pawn. See, here's the important thing. That weakness is not going away. And since white's opened up the f file and black still hasn't started his attack on the king side, the f7 square, you'd logically think white's plays on the queen side, but actually white's plays
on the king side against these weak pawns, but needs to chop some pieces off the board before that can be realized. Okay, pressuring the bishop, and black regains his pawn, and get the queen off the file, pressure on the back on the 7th rank. But black just activates his pieces, says, I don't care if you take my pawn, I've got adequate play here. And white, I think, wisely avoids taking either the pawn on f7 or the pawn on b5 and just slowly improves his position. Black is kind of stuck here. It can't really generate anything. And as long as white's playing safe prophylactic moves, white's going to come out with an advantage here
and there's not much black can do about it. And now white grabs that pawn on b5, and now comes a little tactical skirmish with all kinds of captures and threats. Okay, black's attacking the white queen, which is defending the white rook, so white finds it necessary to grab that bishop off, but it's just a temporary sacrifice. It's actually not a sacrifice at all. If you take the bishop, or take the rook, the bishop just slides back and recaptures. So some more exchanges come up, and now black has restored mostly material equality. He hasn't gained back his pawn yet, although the pawn on e5 is a target. But white's just looking good here. White covers the weak pawn on h5, although black had no way to cover it. To attack it. You might think this g4 pawn's a little weak, but white can bring his king up one way or the other and defend it if need be, get the king into play. And black is still left with these weak pawns. So they're still there. They haven't gone away. And now white goes up 2 pawns, and the h6 pawn still remains weak. And now here white didn't play to win the h6 pawn. He just figured, I will advance my pawn, get a pass pawn, and your pawn will be just as weak on g5 as it was on h6. So the weaknesses in the black king side are starting to show themselves. And there goes the pawn. It's getting dangerous. And now it's all the way to the 7th rank. And black regains his pawn, but in effect he's not going to be able to keep it, and he's going to be left with a losing position. So rook takes g5. Black doesn't have time to take on h7 because his bishop was loose on e5. And if the bishop retreats, it must retreat along this diagonal, otherwise the bishop on f4 or the knight on f4 will fall. And a lot of times white can just drop this rook into g8 with check and win the position. So black jettisons the piece. So finally, here at move 40, actually now move 41, white has won a piece. And this all started way back about move 17 when white played king h. After black castled, white played king h1. White just slowly started, or actually we said the mistake was maybe around move 18 when black took on d4. So it took 22 moves to realize this, but now white has a winning position. It's just a matter of technique. And white just must consolidate his position, trade off a set of minor pieces, and then pick off the black pawns and advance his own, and he'll win easily. Now the white rook is cutting the black king out of the game, and here white's willing to trade off his dark squared bishop. He doesn't need it. He's getting rid of that knight. And even though the black rook has white's king hemmed in, it doesn't matter. Black is just too weak here. The knight can be used at the right time to shield the king out of danger. For instance, the king can come up this way, or some method similar to that, depending on the position of the pieces. Black stops and guards his pawn. But what's black threatening? The a3 pawn is covered. Black can't do anything. It's just a matter of closing out the game. So white starts attacking the weak pawn on e6, driving it up the board. And after knight d2, black lost on time, but he's clearly losing this game. The threat is to take, and if you just advance, white wins this relatively easy. Need to cover that pawn. And as I said, it's a matter of using the king and the knight to get the king activated. The knight's going to block the A file so that the king can advance. It's just a routine win here for white. Now the king's getting into the game. And there's nothing black can really do here. See, that white king's coming up, and eventually this king will be driven out, this pawn will be lost, and these pawns will run in. Anyway, excellent game of patience and on white's part. Once again, going back to this critical move, black sacrificed a pawn and over the next few moves, and white just ended up capitalizing on all the weak pawns on the king side. C4 would have might have made it a whole different game. Then just logically you want to get this rook over here, right? That's what you want to do. You want to be able to try to attack on this file. What's white going to do? Play for B3? Maybe. You could take it, reinforce with B5. Just make it a wide open game. None of this is forced. I'm just kind of playing some moves here. So we can chop. Oops. We can chop a few things off. Now maybe that black king needs to head for the hills before he gets checkmated. I don't know what's happening here. Could still be a potentially even game. Maybe white's attack is just not there. And with these two pawn chains on the board, the lines of communication on both sides are the pivot points for white between his king side and queen side are here, and for black it's the F8 square. This king should probably be safe. White checks. We'll just back a knight up, and I don't think white can get at that king. But anyway, well played by both sides, and there's one video to make now, and I'll get to it soon. And thank you so much.